Hi, this is Ben Voss at FN. This instructional video is going to walk you through the installation of your FN SCAR non-reciprocating charging handle kit. During these instructions, I'm going to talk about how to install the kit into your rifle, how to disassemble it and reassemble it after it's been installed, and how to operate the rifle with it installed on the rifle. This instruction will cover the installation of your SCAR non-reciprocating kit into the SCAR 16S, 17S, and 20S. There are two non-reciprocating charging handle kits. There's a SCAR Light kit for your SCAR 16S and a SCAR Heavy kit for the SCAR 17S and 20S. The installation of the 20S is slightly different than it is for the 16S and 17S, but we'll talk about that at the end of the video. So for the 16S and 17S, that is what these instructions will cover in detail. Regardless of what your rifle is equipped with and which one of the kits you get to have your light, they all come with the same components. A non-reciprocating charging handle bolt carrier, the new non-reciprocating charging handle sled. It'll come with two charging handles, a curved or offset charging handle and a short low-profile charging handle. Also included for the 16S and 17S is going to be a new front plate. In that front plate will be a new latch pin, and when we reinstall the new front plate, there'll be also two new front plate screws that'll be included in your non-reciprocating kit. You're going to need some tools that you specifically need to make this installation possible. They will include a Torx 25 bit on a driver, a Torx 25 bit on a 62-inch-pound torque wrench or torque limiter, a 2.5mm hex driver, a 22.1-inch-pound torque wrench or a torque wrench set at 22.1 inch-pounds. You're also going to need a heat gun capable of delivering heat to the part at 500 degrees Fahrenheit. For reinstalling of the front screws, you're going to need Loctite 263 or an equivalent high-strength permanent Loctite or thread locker. Also, a padded vise is going to be very helpful when we remove that front plate. Before you attempt to install your non-reciprocating charging handle kit, please thoroughly read through the instructions included with the kit to make sure that you have everything in place and that you're fully confident that you can successfully install the non-reciprocating charging handle kit. If you're not fully confident that you can successfully install the non-reciprocating charging handle kit yourself, please consult a qualified gunsmith or contact the FN Customer Service Department for assistance. Because we're going to be disassembling the rifle, make sure you wear your eye probe before you move any further. So the first step on the disassembly of your rifle is going to be to clear the rifle. First, make sure the safety lever is located in the safe position. Remove the magazine. Pull the charging handle to the rear to inspect the chamber to make sure the chamber is empty and there's no ammunition present in the rifle. Allow the bolt to go forward on an empty chamber. Next, you're going to remove the trigger module frame by pressing from the left side on the takedown pin, pulling it out to the right. You're going to remove the trigger module frame from the receiver. Next, you're going to remove the rear stock assembly off the back of the receiver. Now we're going to remove the moving parts assembly. First comes out the dry spring and guide rod assembly. Then you can take the charging handle, move the bolt carrier assembly to the rear, pull the charging handle out, and then the entire bolt carrier assembly comes out of the back of the receiver. Once you've got the bolt carrier assembly out of the rifle, we need to remove the bolt, the firing pin retaining pin, and the cam pin because we're going to put those into the new non-reciprocating bolt carrier. First thing is remove the firing pin retaining pin, remove the firing pin, remove the cam pin, and the bolt out of the front of the bolt carrier. We can set those parts aside, and then you take the reciprocating charging handle and bolt carrier and set those to the side. Our next step is to remove the barrel assembly for the SCAR 16S and 17S. For the SCAR 20S, you do not need to remove the barrel assembly. To remove the barrel assembly from your SCAR rifle, you're going to need a T25 bit on a bit driver. There are 6 screws on your SCAR 16S or 17S barrel assembly that need to be loosened and popped slightly out, but they will not be fully removed. That is what that T25 is for. There's 2 on the front barrel support, and there's 2 on each side on the barrel extension toward the middle of the rifle. For disassembly or removal of the barrel assembly, it doesn't matter in the order in which I loosen each of these screws, so I'm just going to start up here on the front. It'll be that forward screw, T25, and I'm just going to loosen it, and once it quits ratcheting, it will pop out slightly but not come completely out of the receiver. Then we'll move back to the barrel extension. Loosen each one of these screws. I'm just going to flip over to the other side. Loosen that front screw on the front barrel support. And come back and get those two barrel extension screws. With all 6 of those screws popped out slightly, I should be able to just slide the barrel assembly forward out of the receiver. So with those 6 screws loosened, I'll push forward on the bottom part of the barrel extension. I'll slide the barrel assembly forward until that barrel extension clears an opening in the bottom of the receiver, and the gas block is free and clear of the front plate. Then I can just lift the barrel assembly straight out of the receiver. And I can set the barrel assembly to the side. Our next step is going to be to remove this front plate. That is where the heat gun and our padded bench vise are going to come into play. Our next step on the SCAR 16S and 17S is going to be to remove that receiver front plate. There are two 2.5 millimeter screws on each side of the front plate on the front of the receiver that we're first going to have to soften the Loctite on with the heat gun, and then with that 2.5 millimeter wrench, remove those screws from the receiver, allowing the front plate to come out of the receiver. So to do this, we're going to place it in that padded vise. Place it in the padded vise and clamp it firmly into place so our hands are free to operate the wrench and the heat gun. So with our heat gun, we're going to apply localized heat to the front receiver plate and that screw, one at a time. I'm going to apply heat to it while I try to loosen the screw with the wrench, allowing the heat gun to soften the Loctite, allowing the torque that I'm applying to it constantly to loosen it and soften it so that the screw breaks free instead of me trying to force it with the wrench. So it may take quite a bit of heat applied to it. This may take 2 to 3 minutes of heat application to soften that Loctite. With the thread locker defeated, I can go ahead and remove that screw very carefully because it is going to be very hot. I can just set that aside. Now I'll take the screw out of the opposite side. Again, I'm going to apply heat with the heat gun to this side. And carefully remove that screw. Next, you could either let this front plate cool, or if you have a pair of pliers, you can just grab the front plate, slide it straight out of the front of the receiver with the pliers. It is going to be very hot unless you let it cool down. So if it's hot when you pull it out, make sure you set it on a metal surface that won't burn when you set the heated part on it. After it's cooled, we're going to take a cleaning brush, and there may be some Loctite in the countersink of these front screw holes. We'll go ahead and brush that residual Loctite out, just clean it up for when we reapply the new screws. Our next step is going to start installing the new non-reciprocating parts. Our next step is going to be to install that latch pin into the new front plate. So we need to install this new latch, this latch pin, into the new non-reciprocating front plate, which has got a hole that's going to hold that pin in place. Take the pin, insert it into the part so that it crosses both sides, and then when it goes into the receiver will hold that pin in place. With the latch pin installed in the front plate, I'll just slide that new front plate into the front of the receiver and push it in until it's flush on the front. Now with the new front plate screws that were supplied with the kit, I need to put a drop of that high-strength thread locker on the threads of that screw. Just a drop, and then I can install this screw at 22.1 inch-pounds with the torque wrench. Apply the thread locker to the other screw. Again, just a drop. Now we're ready to reinstall the barrel assembly. Now we're ready to reinstall the barrel assembly into the receiver. If you look at the bottom of the receiver, you'll notice there's a squared opening that's going to allow for the barrel extension to slide into the receiver before we slide the barrel extension back. Before we do that, we need to make sure that those 6 screws that we loosened to remove the barrel assembly are still popped out, allowing for the barrel assembly to slide to the rear. So I'll place the receiver on the table upside down, turn the barrel upside down, and I'll lower it into the receiver. And you'll notice as it goes in, the gas block is clearing the front of the receiver front plate. The rail is now flush with the bottom of the receiver. Again, those 6 screws are all popped out. I can just slide the barrel assembly straight back into the receiver. As the front barrel support comes into the receiver, I may need to guide that front barrel support into the front of the receiver. But once it's flush on the front and all my screws are aligned, I'm now going to apply torque to all 6 of the screws in a pattern. So starting at the rear of the rifle, it does not matter which side, I'm going to tighten this screw, then go to the opposite side, then move forward to the opposite side of that, go back, and I'll zigzag from the middle of the rifle to the front of the rifle, first tighten the screws, and then I come back later with the torque wrench and apply the torque. So with the T25 on the Torx driver, again, starting on either side but the rear screw, I'm going to first make sure the screw starts, and I'll run it in until it just snugs up. Then I'm going to go to the opposite side, that same screw. I'll get it started and just snugged up. Go to the opposite side, come forward 1 screw. All the way on the front barrel support. And the last screw on the opposite side on the front. Now, with the torque wrench, I'm going to, in that same sequence, starting in the rear and alternating sides as I move forward, I'm going to apply the final torque of 62 inch-pounds. This is a torque limiter, so it just slips when it reaches the torque. It doesn't click. And then the final screw on the front barrel support. Now the barrel assembly is installed. Next, I need to now put the moving parts assembly together with the new non-reciprocating parts. Next, we're going to install the bolt assembly, firing pin, cam pin, and firing pin retaining pin into your new non-reciprocating bolt carrier. So first thing, you're going to take your bolt assembly just like you did on your reciprocating bolt carrier, insert it in, take the cam pin, put it into the bolt so the slotted end faces the line of the bore, take the firing pin, insert it into the back, it goes through the cam pin, and then the firing pin retaining pin goes in on the left side of the bolt carrier assembly. Next, we're going to take the receiver, and we're now going to install that charging sled. The charging sled, as you'll see, has a latch on the front. This latch is going to interact with that pin we installed in the new front plate and also grab the front part of your new bolt carrier. To install this into your receiver, it's going to lead with the latch, and the latch will be facing the top of the receiver as you insert it into the bottom of and the rear of the receiver. You'll slide it forward into the receiver until the pockets for the charging handles are visible in the rear window, the rear part of the charging handle slot in the receiver. Now, just like before on your reciprocating charging handle, you're going to insert the charging handles into that slot into the charging sled. So here you have the option as an operator to get full maximum use of the adaptability of the SCAR with the two new charging handles. You can put either one in on either side. You can put one or the other in. They don't have to both be installed. So I'm typically going to install the slot or the angled one on the left side, turn the rifle over, and I'll put the low profile one in on the right side, and I'll slide those forward and lock the charging sled assembly fully forward into the receiver. Next, I'll take the bolt carrier assembly, make sure the bolt is forward. I'll insert this into the back of the receiver just like you did before, but now with the charging handles already installed in the charging sled, all I need to do is push the bolt carrier all the way forward. The next step is going to be the guide rod and spring assembly goes into the back of the bolt carrier assembly just like before. Rear stock assembly can now be installed. Trigger module assembly, takedown pin, and that would complete the assembly of your rifle with a non-reciprocating charging handle kit. So for SCAR 20S owners, since we don't have to remove the front plate and we don't have to remove the barrel assembly, once we've taken the reciprocating parts out, we really only need to reassemble at operator level with non-reciprocating parts. So that includes installing your bolt, firing pin, cam pin, and firing pin retaining pin into your new non-reciprocating bolt carrier, which I've already done. Next, we need to take that charging sled. We're going to install it inside the rifle. The latch is going to lead just like it did on the 16S and 17S. Slide it forward until the pocket for the charging handles sits in the rear window of the charging handle slot. Take either charging handle, put it in on one side, and I'm going to put the low profile one in on the right side. And I'll slide that charging sled all the way forward till it locks into place. So you're probably wondering why I don't have to remove the front plate on a 20S. Because the front plate on the 20S is way forward of where the bolt carrier goes. On your 20S, from the very beginning, we already installed a block with that latch pin already in place so that when non-reciprocating came available, you could convert your 20S to non-reciprocating. Next, we'll install the non-reciprocating bolt carrier assembly. Slide it all the way forward. drive spring and guide rod assembly, rear stock assembly, trigger module assembly, takedown pin, and as the final assembly of the SCAR 20S for non-reciprocating. So that concludes the assembly of the non-reciprocating charging handle into the 20S. You should also note that once you've converted your rifle to non-reciprocating by removing that front plate and installing the new one with the pin, you can now use your old reciprocating bolt carrier and charging handle just by disassembling at operator level, reassembling with those reciprocating bolt carrier components. You do not have to remove the front plate if you wish to go back to reciprocating. If you have any questions about the assembly instructions, feel free to contact the FN Customer Service Department. Thank you for watching.